Hey guys, welcome to Lightning Lunch LR. I hope you all are doing super good. I'm excited to see you here, and we're going to go through 4 questions, rapid pace, not too rapid. Of course, we always have time for any clarification if you guys need, but we're just going to get in, get our practice done, and get on with our day. That's how we like to do the LSAT around here. Get in, do your hour of really, really good studying. We're not twiddling our thumbs over here. We're not checking our phones in the middle of a practice test. We're going to get in, do it, crank out some great practice. That's where you'll see the most progress. And then when you're done, you can take a break. That's how you're going to be able to not get burnt out in the LSAT. So let's go ahead and just go into that first question. This one is titled Motivational Posters. Immediately, I'm thinking back to the Scholastic book fairs. I don't know if your elementary school also had them, but that was my favorite day, the book fair. And I always wanted the posters with cats on it. Is it any wonder that I have a cat now? I was one of the ones that was like hanging under the tree, it says hang in there. That was my favorite. I think I got it 1 year. I don't know, but that's what I'm thinking of. So let's see if the LSAT's also thinking the same thing. For some reason, I don't think they will, but we're going to go in and read. It says many corporations have begun decorating their halls with motivational posters. All right, I'm going to stop right there. Lots of corporations decorating their halls with motivational posters. Maybe they have cat posters there too. I don't know. And they're doing this in hopes of boosting their employees' motivation to work productively. Okay, like we were just talking about, using your time studying on the LSAT productively, these corporations want their employees to work productively. They're like, we're just going to hang these posters of a little kitten hanging off a tree, tells them to hang in there. That means they're going to sit down at their desk and do all the good work and use their time efficiently. Okay, sure. This is just a fact. This is what they're hoping to do, and this is why they're doing it. However, what's going on? Almost all employees of these corporations are already motivated to work productively. Wow, those must be very productive corporations because almost all of their employees are already motivated. Now, that's a great thing. We have the facts of corporations want to boost motivation, productivity. Their employees, most of them are already motivated. The final sentence is, so these corporations' use of motivational posters is unlikely to achieve its intended purpose. I don't think so. That's a garbage conclusion because maybe all the employees already are motivated, but motivation's on a spectrum, right? Some days you're more motivated than others. Now, just because I feel less motivated doesn't mean I'm not motivated. And maybe that kitten poster is really going to help me to feel more motivated. Even though I'm already motivated, we could all use a little bit more, couldn't we? So I just don't agree that the corporation's use of these posters means they're unlikely to meet their purpose because their employees are already A+ employees. We could all use a little extra motivation. And for all we know, the corporation's purpose is not to instill a sense of motivation. The purpose could be to make them more motivated where they already have that sense of motivation. So, all right, the reason in the argument is most vulnerable to criticism on the grounds of the argument thinks you can't be more motivated even if you're already motivated. That's my prediction. Do I think the wording is going to be exact there? Definitely not at all. But that's a huge flaw of this argument. So I'm going in looking for an answer choice that explains that because I know that that's the flaw. However, there might be another flaw in here that I didn't spot. I don't think there is, but there might be. And in the case that there is, I'm going to look at each answer choice and really ask myself, did the argument do this? And if it did, is it a problem for the argument? Only then can I say, oh, okay, yeah, this is my answer choice. All right, so is it vulnerable in that it fails to consider whether corporations that do not currently use motivational posters? No. I'm going to stop right there. I don't care about corporations that don't use motivational posters. The only thing this argument is concerned with is corporations that are using them. So I'm getting rid of A immediately. I'm not even going to entertain it. B says takes for granted that with respect to their employees' motivation to work productively, corporations that decorate their halls with motivational posters are representative of corporations in general. No, this argument never made any assumption about corporations in general. This argument only ever talked about these corporations. So B is not a generalization, or sorry, this argument's not a generalization, so we got to get rid of B. See, it fails to consider that even if motivational posters do not have one particular beneficial effect for corporations, they may have similar effects that are equally beneficial. Okay, did this author fail to consider that? Yes, but is that a problem? No, because remember, this conclusion is only about whether or not they're fulfilling their purpose of instilling motivation. Maybe they do other things, like make people think that their office halls are aesthetically pleasing. We're not concerned with that because the goal of these corporations is to boost motivation. The conclusion is that they won't achieve that intended purpose. So I don't care about other great things that these kitten posters might do. I'm only talking about whether they will actually instill motivation. D does not adequately address the possibility that employee productivity is strongly affected by factors other than employees' motivation to work productively. I mean, okay, does it not adequately address this? That's true. It doesn't address this. But again, is this a problem for the argument? No, because our conclusion here is about whether the posters are going to meet their intended purpose. We're not talking about other things that affect motivation. Um, we're only talking about, are these posters going to meet their intended purpose? And D doesn't address that flaw there. E fails to consider that even if employees are already motivated to work productively, I'm really liking this so far, motivational posters may increase that motivation. This is it, right? This says, hey, ding dong, you forgot to consider that even if your employees are already motivated, they might be more motivated with these kitten posters. So that's what E talks about. It's the flaw that we spotted the very first time we read the argument. Does anyone have questions about this one? All right, then off to the second question we go. This one's titled Wealthy Nations. All right, well, we'll just have to wait for it to load for a second. My computer's been unusually slow this morning, so I apologize for the delay. It says, hello? Okay, it's a letter to the editor, we find out. And this letter says, middle-class families in wealthy nations are often criticized for the ecological damage resulting from their lifestyles. This is just a fact. That if you're a middle class family in a wealthy nation, you are often going to be criticized for the ecological damage that you are creating in your lifestyle. I mean, if you're a middle class family in the United States is a wealthy nation, then you're often going to be criticized for your lifestyle and how that results in ecological damage, right? You're not shopping secondhand. You're going and buying clothes from Target. This criticism should not be taken too seriously, however. All right. This letter says, don't worry about it though. If you're a middle class family in the US, you're going to be criticized for the ecological damage, but don't worry about it. Now, okay, interesting. Why don't I have to worry about it? Well, the letter says, since its source is often a movie star or celebrity whose own lifestyle would, if widely adopted, destroy the environment and deplete our resources in a short time. Okay, so here's what we're talking about. Let's just use the example of Taylor Swift, since she's literally everywhere now. If anybody else is also like me, ready for that period of time to be over, just raise your hand. So anyways, she is obviously has her own private jet, releases all her 20,000 albums and special editions that she wants people to buy, whatever. Um, let's say she's like, hey, middle class families of America, you really should start shopping secondhand. Let's just get rid of consumerism. I mean, one, she'd never say that because then she's like advocating for people to not buy her music. But also, if she did say that, it would sound pretty hypocritical because you're like, okay, Taylor, why don't you fly economy and not take your private jet, right? Why don't you not release all those special editions? So, sure, I get it. It does sound certainly hypocritical. But does that mean the criticism shouldn't be taken seriously? I mean, Taylor would still have a point that, yeah, we should shop secondhand. We shouldn't waste all our food, right? That's still a well-founded criticism, even though it's coming from somebody who is certainly not doing ecologically friendly things. So I don't love this letter to the editor. I agree that this criticism would be hypocritical, but that doesn't mean the criticism is ill-founded. All right, the reasoning in the letter to the editor is vulnerable to the criticism in that it attacks the person giving the argument instead of the actual argument and the validity of that argument. That's a big problem. It happens quite often in LSAT arguments, so always be on the watch for it. It criticizes a characteristic of the people giving an argument rather than criticizing the argument itself. Yeah, bingo. This says, hey, we're criticizing Taylor Swift and her non-environmentally friendly practices instead of actually criticizing the argument, which is whether or not middle-class families in wealthy nations should be criticized for their ecological damage. All right, B takes failure to act consistently with a belief as an indication of the sincerity with which that belief is held. No, because the letter never said that Taylor Swift's being insincere. The letter just said Taylor Swift does not do environmentally friendly things. So sincerity is not an aspect of this argument. C presumes that a viewpoint must be unreasonable to accept simply because some of the grounds advanced to support it do not adequately do so. No, the author never said the viewpoint must be unreasonable to accept. The author just said the criticism shouldn't be taken too seriously. That's different than saying you should never believe this criticism, right? That's very different. That's what answer choice C is saying the argument did, and it just didn't do that. It wasn't that serious. It just said you shouldn't take it too seriously because Taylor's flying on her private jet. Okay, D fails to recognize that evidence advanced in support of a conclusion actually undermines that conclusion. There was no evidence here that undermined their conclusion, so I can't pick this one. That just didn't happen. I'm pretty confident that if I had seen evidence that actually indicated contrary to the conclusion, I would have spotted it. And I didn't spot anything like that, so I'm going to get rid of this one, especially where I already have answer choice A and I feel pretty good about it. I'm just crossing off answer choice D. E generalizes about the behavior of all people on the basis of the behavior of a few. Was there ever a generalization about the behavior of all people? Certainly not, right? There was a generalization about the source being often a movie star or celebrity, but it wasn't saying the source is always or these people always do this. It's just saying maybe it would, shouldn't be taken too seriously. There's no like sweeping generalization. Again, this is another thing that if it were a flaw, I'm pretty confident I would have spotted it the first time, and I didn't. So I feel pretty good in getting rid of this. A is the answer choice. Somebody's asking, how is this a level 3 difficulty? The correct answer jumped out so quickly that I had to pause to make sure it wasn't really that easy. That's the thing, you guys. If these questions are easy to you, they're easy to you. The difficulty level is taken and it's decided based on how long people spend on the questions, how long before they select the correct answer, how many people select the incorrect answer. It's all those different variables. That's how we get the difficulty level. But for you, this might have been a super easy one. I think what makes this one more difficult is that some of these answer choices are like almost there. And if you're not being careful, you're going to be persuaded by them. So this is just a PSA that if you read slowly and carefully, you're not going to be persuaded by those wrong answers. Just like this person in the comments who said, how the heck was this a level 3? You're going to say that same thing because if you read carefully, the correct answer is going to literally jump out at you, especially if you focus on making good predictions. All right, let's go into the next question. This one is titled Beauty and, my thing's loading again. Oh, Beauty and Truth. Okay, very interesting. Oh, Aurora, you have a question. Go ahead.
Just a quick one. I'm trying to remember from like earlier on in my study. Is that logical flaw ad hominem? What is the name of it when you attack the person? Not is that the name of that logical flaw?
Yep. An ad hominem attack is where you
Yeah,
attack the
ad
person
hominem
giving the
attack.
argument instead of the actual
Yeah,
argument.
that's
Yep.
okay. I just wanted to confirm that that was it. That's all.
Yeah. No, really good job. All right. This one says there is a difference between beauty and truth. I agree. Something that's beautiful doesn't have to be true. There are going to be beautiful stories that are fictional, right? So there's a difference between beauty and truth. Great. After all, if there were no difference, then the most realistic pieces of art would be the best as well. Is that true? Immediately, I'm thinking, okay, the most realistic, those are the most truthful. And if there wasn't a difference between beauty and truth, well, then the most truthful art pieces would also be the most beautiful. Okay, I guess, right? If there were no difference, then the most realistic pieces of art would be the most beautiful. But recognize, we're just talking about beauty here, and we're talking about the best. Is the most beautiful artwork always the best? We don't know that. That right there, I've already found a huge hole. So I'm going to keep reading really cautiously. Hopefully, the argument will tidy this up. It says, since the most realistic pieces are the most truthful. Okay, I already kind of inferred that. Maybe I shouldn't have. But it says, if there's no difference, the most realistic pieces, which are the most truthful, would then be the best. I don't know that they're going to be the best because I don't know that the best and the most beautiful are the same thing. If they're the most truthful and there's no difference between truth and beauty, then they would also be the most beautiful. But does that mean they're the best? I don't know. This last sentence says, but many of the most realistic artworks are not among the best. Okay, again, where's the beauty? Where's the beauty? This author is assuming that the best artworks are the most beautiful. I know that for sure. Because again, we're equating beauty and truth. If there's no difference, the most truthful artworks are the most beautiful. And this author says that can't be true because the most truthful artworks are not the best artworks. Well, again, I'm missing that link between beauty and the best artworks. It must be that the best artworks are the most beautiful. Otherwise, this argument falls apart. There's a big jump here, and I want you to recognize this before you even get to the question. There's a couple different question types this could be, but it says which one of the following is an assumption required by the argument. The assumption is that the best artwork is the most beautiful. That has to be it. Otherwise, it all falls apart. And if I have that assumption, the argument makes total sense and it's logical. All right. A, the most beautiful artworks are the best artworks. Bing, I mean, right off the shot. You got it. Easy. Nothing too complicated. If you go in here, guys, I've never done this question before. If you go in here and you're critical of it from the get-go, you can see the holes in the argument before you get to the question, which is the goal for all of us. Let's just get rid of all these other wrong answers. If an artwork contains non-realistic elements, then it is not at all truthful. It could be partially truthful because it could also contain realistic elements, right? Because realistic pieces are truthful. If there's any bit of realism, you could assume that there's some bit of truth. So B just doesn't have to be our assumption. The author doesn't have to agree with this, so that's gone. It also doesn't get us to the conclusion that uh, there's a difference between beauty and truth. Okay, see, none of the best artworks are realistic. No, that could be true. It could be true that some of the best artworks are realistic because here it just says many of the most realistic artworks are not among the best. But it could be true that some of them are. C doesn't have to be true. D, only the best artworks are beautiful. No. Doesn't have to be true. I mean, there could be beautiful paintings that aren't the best, right? And so that's what's wrong with this one, with this answer choice. It just doesn't have to be true. It's different from A. Recognize that difference. E, an artwork's beauty is inherently subjective and depends on who is viewing it. The author does not have to agree with this. This doesn't have any place, subjectivity doesn't have any place in here. We're talking about beauty and truth and what's the best artwork. Subjectivity, although we know that art is subjective, if you pick this answer choice, you were bringing in your own knowledge. And remember, we got to stick to the information in the passage. All right, any questions about this one? Okay, let's go into, oh, Monica, go ahead.
Hi, Kaylee. Sorry. Quick question. I read answer choice A and I'm like, that's my prediction. I love it. I want to move on. Like for practice sake, I should read through all the answer choices and like pinpoint why they're wrong exactly. But on test day, can I just select A and keep going?
On test day, I still want you to go through every answer choice because
Okay.
I would say, honestly, it happens to me at least once on any given test where my prediction perfectly matches an answer choice. And then I read through the rest of the answer choices and I'm like, oh, wait, one of these is actually better than my prediction. So,
Okay.
we can feel confident when we see an answer choice that matches our prediction and be like, yeah, this is probably it. But we still want to be open to the possibility that other answer choices might also be correct. And so, especially on test day, I want you to do this, both in practice and on test day.
Got it. Thanks so much.
Of course, yeah. Trudy.
I just had a quick question. When they brought up the realistic factor, what did they mean by that?
So how real a piece is. So think about like Van Gogh. Is Starry Night like super realistic? No, not necessarily. Think about Salvador Dali. Are his pieces really realistic? No, not really. But there are artists who do realism, who paint a bowl of fruit. That's really realistic. So realistic art is saying, art that actually portrays what the real world looks like.
Oh, okay, thank you.
Of course. All right, let's get to this last question about Hillview. I'm determined to get you out of here on time. So this one says, on some hot days, the smog in Hillview reaches unsafe levels. Uh-oh. Sometimes when it's hot, the smog reaches unsafe levels. And on some hot days, the wind blows into Hillview from the east. Okay. So some hot days, the smog reaches unsafe levels. Some hot days, the wind blows in from the east. Therefore, on some hot days when the wind blows into Hillview from the east, the smog in Hillview reaches unsafe levels. No. I don't know that these two things are correlated. I don't know that they have any connection. Here, this conclusion just made a connection that when the wind blows in from the east, the smog must be reaching unsafe levels, presumably because it's a hot day, but I don't know that. I know that a hot day and smog at unsafe levels are correlated. I know that a hot day and wind blowing in from the east are correlated. I don't know that smog and wind blowing in from the east are correlated. So really watch out for that here. The reasoning in the argument is flawed and that the argument makes a correlation that actually isn't there. A says mistakes a condition that sometimes accompanies unsafe levels of smog for a condition that necessarily accompanies unsafe levels of smog. No, the author never said when there's smog, it's always a hot day. The author just said on some hot days, there's smog that reaches unsafe levels. Presumably, we could have smog on days when it's not hot. We don't know. The author never says anything contrary to that. So A is not a problem. B fails to recognize that one set might have some members in common with each of two others. Okay, I'm going to stop right there. This wording is not what I was expecting of any answer choice. So what's this one set? I'm going to say that's a hot day. So fails to recognize that hot days might have some members in common with each of two others. So the two others, smog, wind. So hot days has something in common with smog, and hot days has something in common with wind, right? There's a correlation between those things. So it fails to recognize that one set might have some members in common with each of two others, even though those two other sets have no members in common with each other. Yep, this is what's going on. So what this answer choice says is that it fails to recognize that because hot days and smog are related and hot days and wind are related, it automatically assumes that smog and wind are then related. And we don't know that. So that's what answer choice B is saying. This was exactly my prediction, just in weird wording, right? You guys are already pointing out such strange wording. I totally agree. Be willing to look at this, really break it through and break it down and ask yourself, is this the same thing? What is this really saying? Then you can assess how close it was to your prediction, if it answers the question, if it's ultimately the flaw. C uses the key term unsafe in one sense in a premise and in another sense in the conclusion. No, the term unsafe meant the same thing all around. That it reaches unsafe levels and it reaches unsafe levels. It's the same thing. We're talking about smog reaching unsafe levels. Not good for you. There was no conflation between the terms there. D contains a premise that is implausible Unless the conclusion is presumed to be true. No, this would be like circular reasoning, right? Unless the conclusion is true, the premise can't also be true, which that's just not true. The premises here can be true. They are true. And the conclusion can be false. We don't know if it is, but it can be false. So there's no circular reasoning here. That would look like on some hot days in Hillview, or on some hot days, the smog in Hillview reaches unsafe levels. So on some hot days, the smog in Hillview reaches unsafe levels. I mean, literally, it is that circular, and that's just not what's going on in the argument. Remember, the problem is the correlation between the three different terms. E infers a partial causal relation from a correlation that could be explained in a variety of other ways. Careful, this argument never inferred any causal relation. The argument only ever talked about correlation. The argument didn't say, therefore, on some days when the wind blows into Hillview, the wind makes the smog reach unsafe levels. Nope, the argument just talked about correlation, saying, oh, kind of odd. When this happens, this must also happen for some reason. Not saying one is necessarily causing the other, but just that they both happen. There only were correlations given here, so talking about causal relations just doesn't have a place. All right, B is the only one that can be our answer choice. If you didn't understand B, what I want you to do is go through the rest of the answers, understand why they're wrong. You'll be left with B. That has to be your answer, and you can work through it from there. So this one set is talking about the hot days. The one set is the hot days, a set of hot days. And that set of hot days might have something in common with smog. It also might have something in common with wind, but that doesn't mean that smog and wind have anything to do with each other. There's no correlation there. There doesn't have to be. There can be, but there doesn't have to be. All right, any other questions about this one, you guys? Okay, I'm going to close off class then, but I will stick around for any additional questions. I hope that you have a fabulous rest of your day. If you got to go, not a problem at all, but just stick around if you have any questions. And I will plan to see you tomorrow for our last class of the week for this class anyways. Don't worry about doing the questions at a time. We'll have time to do them in class, and I will see you then. Thanks for coming today, you guys. See you later.